What does a desperate Donald Trump do? Because a desperate Donald Trump is different from a desperate Ali Velshi or Tim Snyder. He's got things at his disposal that we don't have. What do you make of this?
Well, I think he also has problems that you and I don't have. He's in a different situation than he was in 2016. In 2016, he could win or he could lose. Now in 2020, you don't see the kind of lightheartedness that you saw in his campaign in 2016. Everything is dead serious. I mean, so serious that, as you say, it looks desperate. And there are reasons for that. One is that he doesn't have money. He's about $500 million in debt. And once he's no longer president, people are going to come to collect. And the second is he's under investigation for crimes. He and his companies are under investigation for crimes. So long as he's president, he can hold that off. So from his point of view, this is a struggle for life and death. He's not just desperate, as you say, because he's down in the polls or because he thinks he's going to lose. He's desperate because he's in that typical authoritarian situation, which is unfamiliar to Americans, but very familiar to people around the world, which is that if the leader loses, he's afraid of jail and he's afraid of the poorhouse. So that's the structural situation that he's in. There's no reason to be hysterical about it or consider this alarmist. That's simply the way he's looking at the world right now.
What's the other side of the equation? What's the part that we're not hearing, where there are probably military leaders in this country saying, you all are talking about what happens if he doesn't have a peaceful transfer of power. Don't worry, we got this. Or people who are thinking through how they will preserve the institutions that we all rely upon, that we think of as democracy.
That's a really important question, because the institutions don't protect themselves. The institutions only protect us if we protect them first. So if we sleepwalk through November thinking that everything is going to work out automatically, then we're going to have big problems. It's right, as you say, that the military will not intervene. However, what Mr. Trump has been trying to do since the summer are two things. First, he's been trying to change the Department of Homeland Security into an agency which acts against what he perceives to be domestic terrorist threats. And he himself has defined a threat as people protesting around the right to vote. The second thing that he's done is he's been encouraging American citizens to take part in voter intimidation. So these are the things that we have to watch out for. These are the things that we need to be alert for, even as we are calm. And by the way, these are also the things that law enforcement has to pay attention to. In the weeks to come, law enforcement at every level, local, state, and federal, needs to think, am I following the rules here, or am I bending or breaking the rules on behalf of someone who is desperate to stay in power?